All right, so I got the form, got his form down. I'm just gonna deal with it as I start painting it. For the most part, I think I have it the way I want him. Sometimes I forget myself, to stay loose, because if I get lost in the weeds here, um, I'm liable to like throw throw certain things out of proportion, or um, I risk refining certain points too early, and then failing to uh, just get more of the essence. So a lot of these details in here I can hint at or refine in the painting process. I don't want to spend too much time with the like penciling every single um, you know, ridge or surface and all the lines that are in here, because a lot of that can be taken care of just in the process of painting.
Mm-hmm.
Just using my pencil to get perspective lines here. And a few key lines, um, just so that I can keep the perspective straight, or get the perspective correct, um, as we go from left to right and top to bottom. And because this is a glass storefront, there's going to be a lot of reflections. So we have to keep that in mind as we think about the lights and darks, and where um, certain parts on the outside of the store are going to reflect on the windows. And we just have to keep that in mind as we um, block in the dark and light areas. So whatever I do on this side of the image, I should keep in mind how I'm going to treat that on the right side. Kind of like when you're doing reflections in the water.
Uh-huh.
So like these lines that are this line here in the outdoor seating area, it's going to cut across all the way to the right. Wherever there's a reflection, reflective surface, we should catch hints of that. Same with this bottom edge of the shed. We're going to see some hints of that in the window here. And then I'm just going to make sure I get a couple of the lines, just lightly sketching the window pane lines in so I know where they are. Yeah, so now we get the sense that the frame is tilted, as the picture is. And we're going to leave some, I'm going to draw in just generally where the shadow is going to be. Some trees out here. Yeah, so I think I'm going to go ahead and start the painting process. The colors here, I think there's generally a bluish cast over the entire scene. At least I see a lot of blues in the dark areas. And then obviously there are pretty bright areas. So I think part of the challenge will be to, there's the light that's kind of refracting throughout this whole scene, and it gives it sort of there's a bit almost like a foggy sense from how I see it. And part of that is because he's smoking. And so I actually liked this image because I liked the atmosphere that I think the smoke is actually causing. So just keeping that in mind, I think I'll probably do some lifting of the areas around his head to indicate some smoke, a little bit of a cloud of smoke around him. But yeah, otherwise, let's dive in. It's going to be an interesting challenge. Got a lot of bright areas. We got a lot of subtleties in the dark areas. So let's see if we can do this. I think first and foremost, I'm going to do the sky in the upper left. And I think I'll do like a little bit of watered down version. Using the phthalo blue. And I'm kind of just loosely filling in certain areas here because we can see the sky through some of the branches and leaves. I'm just going to leave enough white area there where I can fill it in later with some greens for the trees. So the trick is how do we indicate like it's a clear blue sky day, but we're not seeing that blue directly in the very bright areas. I feel like on this side there's some very bluish tints. It gets warmer over here, and then we kind of come back to some more bluish tints over here. So I'm going to do a little bit of wet on wet. Just going to be kind of loose here. There's actually blues here, right, with the trash cans. I'm going to cover more area than I need to. And I'm going to go back in with that phthalo. May not be the exact color we need here, but we'll deal with that later. And I'm going to try to do a little bit of the same thing on this side since it's mirrored. Just loosely. Now that blue, it's not really the blue that I think we need for the trash cans. And while that's drying, I'm just going to play around with the kind of blue we could use. I'm going to try, is it ultramarine, maybe? Or let's try the French ultramarine. That might be a little bit closer. So I'm just going to keep that in my back pocket when we come back to the trash cans. There is, even though this is a bright area, there's kind of some warmth in there. There's some greens, a little bit of yellow ochre I see, some browns. So I'm going to be loose with this as well. I'm going to put down some water, kind of just barely touching the blues that I already put down. And I don't want to cover that whole area. I want light. I want the white of the paper to show through, but I'm going to take some yellow ochre and just put it in. I'm going to put some greens in here. I'm going to try some burnt sienna. Just to kind of get at these darker areas down here. And you see where the water, I put a little too much water. I went too far to the left, and that bloom has, it results in that bloom and the puddling up right here. And it's not what I really wanted. But I'll put a little bit more burnt sienna in these areas up here. You might use it to emphasize the line here. I'm going to go with the burnt umber. I'm okay with all of this kind of just bleeding together and being loose. You can always go back in and refine it later. I'm going to try to mirror a little bit of what I just did and do it on the right side. Um, adding some water here. Adding some, a little bit of greens. Soak some of that up. I don't want it too much there. I actually see some opportunity here to use some blue to fill in the bar there. I see some blues up here actually. And let's go in with the French ultramarine and work on these trash cans. So it's looking very messy, but I promise it will start to shape up once we've established some of these foundations. I'm going to put a little bit of a darker blue in here using that same French ultramarine because I see some blues in here. All right. I'm going to work on the red of his hat. I think the very top, the brightest part of his hat deserves that pearl orange. I'm just letting it flow because I'm going to eventually cover the I'm going to add some darks to that. And I notice that there's an area down here that's reflecting, his jacket is reflecting the light from that's hitting the window. So it'd be nice to keep that, to capture that somehow. So the whatever light I have on the window should be very similar to what we see on the back of the jacket there, the bottom. And I see here, just made his, everything's a little bit too far out to the left and his arms are too long. So what I'm going to do is quickly fix that. Yeah, I feel better about that now. So I like how that French ultramarine is drying. It's more like the lighter parts of that, of the blue trash bins. When that's drier, I'm going to go back in and make add some volume to it by making the darker parts a richer or more saturated blue. I'm going to work on his jacket, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to just carefully leave space for those highlights. And actually, the darks continue down to his pant legs, his jeans. Here, I'm going to go ahead and do a mixture of burnt umber and my Indian throne blue. It's pretty dark. And because it's wet on wet, it's not going to be as rich as if I just laid down the paint by itself. But I'm going to drop in a little bit more darks here. Just to make it more saturated. And I'm going to use the opportunity to extend up these dark areas to show these wrinkles in the hood, and then these areas that kind of stick out behind here in the folds of the back of his jacket. Trying to get kind of a bend in his jacket where he's sitting. And I'm using a warmer blue where it's reflecting the sunlight. Let's lift out some areas here. where his arm is reflecting the sunlight. I'll go back in when that's dried up to add some more hints of the dark. So I think I can go in and add the dark areas on his hat now. What I'll do is I'm going to try neutralizing using that's I think I'm going to use this quinacridone red, and I'm going to add a little bit of cool green to it. The complementary of red is green, and when you do a complementary, it will neutralize it, meaning make it duller, make it darker. And so I'm just going to go in here like this.
That's green.
Mixed in with red.
Yeah. The red that was already there, or you mixed it separately, red and green?
I mixed a red and I separately mixed a red. That was my quinacridone red with the green.
Okay.
My perylene green. When I go up here, I'm going to do this same mixture that I used for his jacket. And I'm going to do the interior of the awning.
And what did you say the complementary does?
Complementary dulls that color, and it creates a neutral.
Okay, dulls it.
It creates it generally becomes a gray with tints of those two complementary colors.
Got it.
So even though I know that the side of the shed is actually a blue, the refried beans blue, I'm using my dark mixture here anyway, because to me the value is the more important factor here. Rather, it's the more important factor as opposed to making sure I get a blue in there instead of something dark. So with structures, there's a lot of ways that you can imply different shapes and there are a lot of lines that we could get bogged down in the details of, but simply using our brush strokes, we can hint at them. So there's a bunch of lines in here that I'm going to try to achieve through sort of broader strokes. I'll do that in a little bit. Just still thinking about kind of how to simulate this reflection. I still need to do a little bit of browns over here. It's kind of like a hazy feel. And overall, this area right here, it's going to be this area right behind him where the sun is hitting the glass. I see actually some blues in there. So I'm going to just loosely put in some blues. Maybe too much. I'll end up covering up a lot of that as I fill in more of these details. I'm just going back and forth to different areas now because that gives me things to do while I'm waiting for something to dry. Using kind of my dirtied brush to hint at these areas here that are going to be darker. They're going to be divided up in shadow. And then the lighter area of the ground, it's a little tricky because my eyes are playing tricks on me. I know it's a gray surface. So how should I deal with that? Well, I'm going to actually put in I'm going to put in a little bit of yellow ochre, warm it up, because it's not completely gray. the sun is very bright, so it's bringing out some of the warmth that's in that material, in the substance. Might actually put in a tiny bit of yellow. Might help it to glow a little bit. And then I'm gonna do, for the shadow, for the shaded parts here on the ground, I'm gonna do the same burnt umber and blue mix, but slanted towards the blue side. Now I'm purposely going up as close as I can to his mouth because I want to have some dark areas here where I can lift and simulate some smoke. And I'm going to try to make these edges a little bit softer. Just going back over the edges. Okay, well now where else can I go to? I've got his face too that I need to deal with. I'm gonna wet it a little bit. This is yellow ochre. I'm gonna put in a little bit of red here. And where his cheeks are, the top of his lip, his ear. So I'm just laying some foundations down. All right. I think his jacket needs to get darker. So I'm gonna go back in with this dark burnt umber, Indian throne blue mixture, leaning towards the blues. And also do his hands. The hands are pretty bright in the highlights. So I'm probably just going to leave them white. Now I can start putting in some of these details using my darks. His face is starting to appear. This is always a fun part because when the features start to become more real. And all right, let me go back to the features of the restaurant itself so we don't forget those. Going back to a larger brush so I can do these the main like dark features. Again, gonna make a dark mixture. I'm gonna go ahead and just use pretty dark strokes. See how dark this is? It's not even black. But I'm using burnt umber. It's really amazing how dark it can be. Burnt umber and Indian throne blue. Normally when you mix like a brownish and a blue, you get a nice gray. And depending on the color temperature, you can actually get very close to like a dark black. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in a good amount here. And I'm going to use lifting techniques to help us get some of these edges out. using the brush strokes to indicate those metal rods that are underneath the awning. These areas here are extra dark, so I'm trying to make sure I stay true to that. I'm gonna add a little bit of blue there to accentuate the darkness. Let me make sure I don't forget the trees up here. Got this area beneath his jacket, kind of a cold gray tone. That's too green. It's probably pretty good actually. Some browns in there. Yep. Soak that up a little bit. Some more paper towels. There are some hints of brown up here. Too much. Let me get his shoes. Too much water. I'm going to add a touch of this really bright area on top. Just let that dry a little bit. I'm going to work on the trash cans again. I want those to be actually pretty dark because they're in shadow. So I'm going to take that French ultramarine. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber to it and kind of neutralize it. Just leaving hints of that initial layer so you can tell that it was that blue when there's a light on it. And there's some dark areas, kind of smudgy areas here. And add some darks where we need some shadows. Now I'm not getting these structures exactly right, but I think that's okay. As long as we get some hints of light reflecting off the edges of those columns, it gets the message across. I'm going to try to bring out more of this hazy brown that we see in the back.
You think you're gonna do the score lines in the sidewalk for definition or not?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I will. Kind of just leaving bits of it on um, where it gets lighter. You don't want to
Yeah.
fill all of it in. And then definitely the shadow under his legs. I'm going to use
Yeah.
larger brush for that, slightly larger. I'm going to go towards the bluish side. There we have it. Let me just lift a little bit near the cigarette and see if I can try to do this.
That's simulating the smoke.
What?
Simulating the smoke.
Yeah, might be a little tough. It may not get across unless I really make it clear that he's smoking. And it's a little hard to see that it's a cigarette, but I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a tiny edge there. And then
Is he holding a cigarette or is
it's in
he
his
just
mouth.
got it in his mouth? It's in his mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. The photo's a little blurry for me, so I couldn't quite tell.
What I have to do is kind of lift out even along his hat. So it looks like it's rising upward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like that. Yeah, overall, I think it's getting across the glow of the scene. Like that's what was most important to me.
Yeah, yeah, I think it did. I think you captured the light really well. I'm thinking maybe just a bit more green in the greenhouse,
Mm.
or not a greenhouse, but whatever the eating shed. Because are those plants in there, or is that plant on the other side of them?
There's plants up here. Definitely hard to convey those. They're like in
Yeah,
planters that are
yeah, it's very
hanging.
diffuse.
Yeah, they're like hanging. So definitely there could be a lot of things to do there. Um, I think for now, it's enough to just hint at. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
I like how there's this like almost like foggy ray. This um, what's the word? It's this ray of
Diffuse.
sunshine coming through here, which is nice. Like, so if I kind of just make things darker, a little bit darker around it.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. Yeah, so this is helping me to bring out the reflection in the windows behind him.
hmm So you're painting around the negative space, is that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I left lines here, open bright areas here too. Um,
Indicate negative space.
yeah, and to match, the bottom of the shed that's
hmm
going that way.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And there's some things up here because it's the light is reflecting off the ground and making the underneath areas a little brighter. And I'm going to achieve that
Mm-hmm.
by just kind of lifting off certain parts here. It's not exact, but actually, I'm going to use the smaller brush to do that up here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit more subtle of a gradation up here. So I'm going to wet it and then just dropped in wet and wet. So it allows it to blend a little bit better. Same around here. This could be blended better because it should be more like smudgy on the window. And then I see one area here I can improve on. I'm gonna just, oh, it's too dark, too dark. I think that's pretty close. I'm gonna just do a couple refining touch-ups. These things are closer to the eyes, so I want to take the opportunity to just refine them a little bit. I'm gonna make his hands that are the parts of his hands that are facing us, they gotta be darker. Um,
Do you think if I like how the light how you've allowed the light that's reflecting off of him, his front and his back.
Yeah.
The front's not quite as it's not quite as recognizable, but I see it. I just wondered if it were a little,
Which part? Over here?
yeah, the front of his leg. If that was if it or if the sidewalk were just a little darker, that would be more apparent. But I can see it.
Oh, I see what
I
you're
might be
saying.
just right.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, what I could do is actually, I'm gonna, darken it.
Yeah, that did it. That did it. That totally did it. Yeah. Yeah. That's what. Yeah, that definitely makes that negative space pop out of there.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm gonna call it done.
Looks good, Francis. That was a hard one. Probably why you chose it.
Yeah, it's just it's not something I've been it, actually if you see a few lines here. It's a definitely I thought it was going to be a big challenge, and I've been wanting to paint this scene for a while, and I've just been waiting for the right moment. And I think I will probably do this again. Because now I feel like I have a better understanding, and this is basically what a
Mm,
study does, right? I have a
hmm
better understanding now of what my approach would be. So yeah, when you do this, like you're learning about, like, it's when you treat it as experimenting, then you just feel freer to um,
hmm
mess up
Explore it.
and just try things out. So I'll probably do. I'm going to treat this as a study, even though I do like it. I think it. I think it could stand on its own.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but I think this image, I really like the image, the picture, and like I wanted to do a large version of it, you know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So
You like it for the contrast, the value contrast, and
y-
the light, the kind of light
to,
that's reflected around and bouncing around, and
exactly.
yeah,
And there's lots of challenges here, right? Like you have things behind in the shed, behind glass. We have reflections of
yeah,
glass,
right,
lots of different
yeah,
directions of light, a lot of great
hmm
contrast. So, yeah, awesome.
good job.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging in there. I know this is a little
You bet.
longer